This is Sarah Leslie with Go All In, helping entrepreneurs live the life they want to live right now, making the money they want to make, the way they want to make it, while also living a rich and full life outside of their business. True personal freedom. Let's go. Hey, and welcome to Go All In. So jumping right in today, I have had so many conversations over the last several weeks, months around the topic of control versus living in surrender. This concept between being in control and versus being in the surrender of life. And whether it's we're talking about surrendering to God, we're surrendering to life, we're surrendering to the universe, however it is that you think about it, it's the state of being more than anything else. Yeah. So I'm going to stick with that for this moment. And also I wanted to outline the basics of what I'm talking about, of what comes up when I hear other people talking about it. One of the stories that comes to mind, I just recently watched an Instagram video with a woman who was hilarious. It's this woman in the passenger seat and she's looking over to the driver's seat and she's pretending that Jesus is sitting over in the driver's seat. And so she goes through this whole skit of her acting out what it is like as the human to allow Jesus, God, to be in control, right? To take the lead, to have the lead, and for her to be in the state of surrender. And her journey of wanting to grab the wheel and take control back versus truly being able to ride in the passenger's seat and feel safe, secure, and surrendered. And so for me, what comes up is this has been such a journey for me, both literally and figuratively, right here as we're talking about driving, because historically I like to drive. And when other people offer to drive, I find a way to be able to say no, and I would prefer to drive. Since then, I've been doing so much of this inner work and so much realization around, wow, it is all connected. And while on the one hand, I want to drive, what's really more true is I want to be in control. And so for years and years and years, I've had motion sickness challenges, and I have assumed that that was a purely physical thing. And then I evolved into realizing it was more also an emotional, mental thing. And now I'm at the point where I recognize, oh, it's part of the spiritual journey. It's part of our journey as a human to recognize that the psychological ways in which we engage are absolutely going to come out through manifestations in the body. And so while it at first can seem like the motion sickness is purely physical, or even, if you will, purely mental, or the combination of the two, which I think it's always a combination of all three of these things, it isn't. It isn't, because everything that we are experiencing is being created within our own minds. And so if it's being created from within our own minds, then we just know it's always going to be a combination of the spiritual, the psychological, and the physical. And you might already be at the point where you see them as all interconnected and they're all one. And I'm stating it for those of you who are not yet at that point, who see all three of those things as being one. So what I now know is it's a spiritual journey. And so I have chosen to condition myself to be able to drive as the passenger and not always be the one who is driving. And even more recently, since we've purchased a Tesla that has the self-driving mechanism, I have learned to allow for yet someone else to be driving, who is not me, while I'm sitting behind the driver's seat, which is a whole different dynamic in and of itself, right? The car is driving itself, so it's the technology that's driving. And I do still have to really be engaged just in case the technology miscalculates, essentially. So all of that to bring us to this reality, right? Humans love to be in control. We love it. We want it. We desire it. We hunger for it. We crave for it. We want to know the future. We want to know that things are going to, quote, work out well. We want to have a choice and a knowing of how things are going to play out. And, ultimately, this circles back to
both within your businesses and within your relationships, all of the places that you show up, it shows up in the form of either being in control, taking charge, or being in the surrender and being in the space that allows for life to unfold. So many, many years ago, I was dating someone and well, I wasn't even dating him. We literally met one time and had some really fabulous conversation. It was like a divine appointment as far as I see it. And he asked me this question in the midst of, I mean, if you know me by now, you know I don't do like, how's the weather and where did you live and all the things. I do like deep, intimate conversation pretty quickly on. Like, let's talk about the important things. And so at some point in this juncture of talking about dating and relationships and intimacy and our stories and where we were at, he asked me, have you surrendered? And I paused and was like, what are we talking about? Like, surrendered to what exactly? And he was like, yeah, if you're asking for that clarification, then it tells me you really haven't, and or that there's simply more room for you to grow in your state of surrender. And here I am now several years later. And I'm so grateful for that conversation and the few conversations that we had after that, that were really focused in on a bigger way of living, a state of being, which is what he was getting at, is this state of being in the surrender, knowing that you're going to receive the things that you desire, yet not holding to them so tightly that you're forcing them to happen, but rather that you're allowing for them to unfold in the trust that they are unfolding. So if you didn't check out my podcast from last week, I would encourage you to, because I go super deep into the difference between believing that we're waiting on life to happen for us versus being in the trust and the faith that life is going to unfold in the time that it sees best for you, but also leading you to the desires of your heart, the things that you've been asking for. And so again, while on the one hand, you crave it in sort of this survival human way, to be in control, to know what's coming, to understand what the future is, to understand what your path is and know it, versus declaring what it is that you desire for your life and then allowing that to unfold. So what I want to assert for you is that living in the thriving state of being in that place that's like easeful and delicious and synchronicities, full of synchronicities, that is living in faith. That is living in the surrender. And that's what I want to offer to you, is like the thing that you're currently seeking, the thing that you've been seeking and desiring for so long. That's what this is. And I'm going to give you some greater information for how to actually allow yourself to live that way. So first off, we want to know the difference. And that really is the most important part, is just having the awareness that you go between wanting to be in control and asserting control to what does it look like to actually be in surrender? And what does it feel like to actually be in surrender? So most of us know what it feels like to be in control. We know what it feels like to want certainty, to know the path, to know the future, to know exactly what I should do today, exactly what I should be spending my time on. And knowing that the way that I spend my time today is going to get me the exact results that I'm most wanting. We know what that experience is like because we're really well practiced at it. The thing we don't know as well is the surrender part. So what I want to add here, right? We know the control and we know the desire to have certainty and to have clarity on what is going to work and what isn't going to work. And where does that come from? It comes from this survival mechanism inside of you that's trying to survive. And so again, I want you to really understand it's coming from this more basic human desire, basic human urge inside of you to stay alive. And so it isn't coming from the most, what I would call the divine place inside of you. It isn't coming from a place of faith. It's coming from a place of, I've got to make sure that I have what I need to keep living. Okay. So it's a very like baseline human existence way of going about things. Now, ironically, a lot of people you are noticing follow that way of being in all of their ways of life, right? So you see that in business where people are pushing forward and they're pushing and forcing for things to happen. And you also see that in relationships where people are pushing and forcing for relationships of varying kinds, whether it's your love relationship, your parent relationship, your friend relationship, to happen on your own terms. And it's coming again from this basic human drive to stay alive and to make sure that you have your basic needs covered. And so there's this level of hustle and grind that ultimately is what we refer to this way of being. And so many people spend a lot of their time in the place that's called lukewarm, in the place that's vacillating and oscillating between being in the control and wanting the control and being in surrender. Another way that you could hear me say that is being in faith and being out of faith. And you have the opportunity to elevate how you live your life, to intentionally learn the difference between asserting control, taking back control, and choosing to live in the surrender. And that's really what we're diving deep into here today is what does it actually look like to be in surrender? So think about like, when do you remember feeling in the surrender of the process? And it can help, I think, sometimes just to think about like surrender period versus the bigger life concepts of surrendering to life or surrendering to God. But just in general, like, when do you remember really truly trusting someone else or some process that it was like for sure going to work? You could probably think of some like immediately when you have trusted another person, like pretty fully surrendered, pretty fully trusted them for this, that, or the other thing, whether it was a one-time thing or a friend that you or a lover that you feel particularly trusting of. And there's like a feeling of surrendered to them versus maybe surrendering to the process, right? Like maybe there was a time where you applied for a job and you just knew you were going to get it. Or, I don't know, my mind is bringing back my memories of college and putting out applications to a handful of different places and believing, knowing, having faith that there were a handful of them that I for sure was going to get accepted to, where there was like no doubt in my mind. I was just fully surrendered to it and didn't really even worry about it, right? So there are all kinds of things happening like that all of the time, like all of the time. So whether you recognize it or not, these processes are happening to you because it is the standard operating procedures of life. This is how life works. These are what is referred to as the spiritual laws. They're just happening. Whether you believe them, whether you know about them, they're literally the way in which we're functioning. So, okay, let's take a look here at surrender. So surrender feels like you are in the passenger seat. That I think is such a great metaphor for how to think about it. We're not in control of how life functions. We don't know whether today is going to be raining or sunny. We don't know. I mean, obviously the weatherman does his best to predict that. And also, we could totally have a freak rainstorm at any moment. You've had plenty of situations where things don't go according to plan because life is outside of our control. Things happen all the time that are outside of our control. You and I can agree on that. So, when we can agree that life is outside of our control, then we can recognize, I actually in the passenger seat of life. That's just a fact. It's not something I need to be convinced of. It's not something I really even need to explore. It's a fact that I do not drive like the entirety of life. I drive only my specific desires forward. I drive my specific life. And that being said, we also aren't driving our own life in the way that we get to decide how things are going to go, right? So again, even when you're hustling and pushing and trying to make things happen, you're doing that inside of the context of life happening, which is God's role is to determine how life is going to happen. God, the energy of God, the expression of God throughout all of existence is always bringing things together in such a way that you and I are growing and we're moving towards the things that we desire based on our level of showing up and being in alignment with the movement towards what we want from a place of surrender. Okay. So again, these are huge concepts. So bear with me. And I'm so glad you're here and you're thinking about these things. So if we're not in charge of life, we're also not in charge of our own experience of life, in the sense that we don't know, still, I don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. This morning, I had an appointment with someone for a sales call to consider working together. And I didn't even cross my mind that she might not show up for the call. Didn't even cross my mind. And yet she didn't show up for the call. And this is like someone I know. So I don't know what happened, but something, wires got crossed somewhere. And it's totally fine. And it was just a moment of recognizing and remembering and clarifying and being prepared to do this podcast with you right after I went through that experience, to be reminded, like, yeah, I actually don't know what's about to happen. I have a sense of what's about to happen in various different places, and I don't know with certainty what is about to happen, even when I feel certain of what is about to happen. So, I have plans today for the other things that are going to unfold with my day. Now, what I'm also keenly aware of, especially in this conversation I'm having with you, is something could derail those plans. That can happen. And so, again, what I'm highlighting here for you is we don't have that level of control that we wish that we did, and that we are oftentimes grasping to have. And the alternative to living in the grasping for control is to consciously choose to live in the surrender instead. So, again, this morning for me, it was so beautiful, totally synchronicity, since I was doing this podcast. And I quickly was like, oh, okay, I see she's not going to show up. Totally fine. Let me send out a quick email to her to find out what happened and see about rescheduling. And what else is priority? And so quickly I shifted a couple of things I was going to work on in this afternoon that ended up taking a little bit more time. So I was so grateful to have been able to work on them this morning. And I quickly launched into action and was like, boom, 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 boom. Okay, I've got all these things taken care of. And so I lived into the surrender, right? Because I have been training and conditioning myself to live in the state of surrender. When this happened, I did not get derailed. Now, a previous version of me would have absolutely gotten derailed. I would have been upset at her for not showing up, for not considering my time, for not being thoughtful, whatever. And I would have been worried about, oh, what about, my business? I got to create clients to keep my business, like all these different places I would have gone to in my mind. And instead, I just simply went to, okay, something has happened. And what is this freeing up time for me to now do instead? And I quickly shifted into the other thing that is currently on my plate that I feel is the most important. And I quickly went into working on that and actually got all of it pretty almost done, like almost done. I have a few more finishing touches on this thing. So again, when we're living in the surrender, we don't get derailed. So again, I'm not 100% in surrender. Trust me, there are plenty of times where I get derailed in the grand scheme of life. And primarily, I'm in the surrender, and I don't get derailed all that often. And when I do get derailed, it's a slight bump versus it used to be a complete derail. So I would just say I have a lot of bumps where I'm like, oh, that's not working out the way I expected to. Okay, cool. Let's pivot over here. That happens regularly. Derailed, I can't actually think of the last time I got where it felt derailed, right? Where I went into like the darkness and was like upset for days. That hasn't happened in a very long time. So learning how to shift from control and controlling to true surrender has been a journey for me. It is not something that I believe I don't really know whether we're born with it. I mean, we're born with the capacity to do it, but do we already know how to do it? I'm not sure of the language, what's the most useful language to put there. What I will say is you 100% have the capacity to do it. And so for me, I have worked with a mentor who in my own continuing processing of my very extensive church background and upbringing, I think of it the same way that I was taught of discipleship, as I am truly being mentored, where someone is coming alongside of me in the journey and teaching me how to live in surrender, how to live in faith, how to actually trust that God is providing for me exactly the desires of my heart. And then learning how to understand, even allowing the receiving of my desires. Like there's so many elements to this. This isn't just like it just isn't like a simple thing. It isn't like you just go do it, right? It isn't like you just go do, because really in general, we don't go do really anything. I mean, everything that I do has been a process of learning how to do it, even the most basic of tasks, right? Like brushing my teeth, driving my car, preparing meals, all the basics of taking good care of myself. Those didn't just happen. That was a series of my parents teaching me how to do all of those things over years. So anytime we get caught up in thinking that something is just going to happen, it's a misunderstanding of how life actually works and how you as a human actually becomes good at anything. Good at anything requires practice. So that being said, it is something that I have leaned into and actually learned how to do. Even for those of you that grew up in the church and maybe you've walked away from the church or you're wrestling with it, I work with a lot of people who are outside the church and also people who are wrestling with their understanding of what they learned in church and learned in Christianity for sure. And also I work with all faiths, just to be like so clear, so clear. That is the true deep calling of my heart, to be available to all people who are desiring to learn how to live in greater surrender, how to learn in greater faith, that life is working in their favor. So for me, thinking back to the church, like there were so many stories around learning and being in faith. And I just didn't have the teachings of truly, 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 like I do now, stepping out of the canoe when Jesus is like, hey, Peter, step out of the canoe, come walk on the water with me. I am now working with someone who's like, hey, Sarah, you can step out onto the water and you will be able to walk. I always thought that would be so cool. I'm like, wow, that would be so incredible to like actually be able to walk on water. And now what I see surrender as is actually walking on water. Whatever that means for you in your unique life experience, your business, your way of doing business, the pricing that you're charging, your personal relationship, and allowing a deep love affair to ensue, your relationships with other humans on the planet, and allowing for deep, beautiful, intimate relationships to ensue. Those things all get generated from learning how to live in surrender. And for me, I can just attest that in spite of my bazillion years in church and my bazillion years as being a therapist, I did not truly, genuinely know how to live in a truly surrendered place. And I'm still learning. As much as I've shifted and as much as I've grown, there is still so much more to shift and grow because it's limitless. The degree of goodness that is available for you is limitless. And so this is a way of being. It's a way of living your life more so than it is like a check the box. Now that's done. Does that make sense? Okay. So thirdly, right? How do we actually become surrendered? Besides working with someone and learning it over time, I'm just going to give you the general gist, right? It's instead of you pushing and trying to make it happen,
This
you're
is
choosing to
Sarah Leslie
believe
with
life
Go
is
All
providing for
In,
you. And so there's a
helping
place
entrepreneurs
that this
live the
takes,
life they
that this
want to
happens from
live
within
right
you. There's
now,
the still small
making the
voice, the
money they
connection,
want
the
to make
intimacy with the
the
still
way they
small
want to
voice of
make it,
God
while
that
also
lives
living
within
a rich
you, that
and
is
full
speaking to
life
you all the
outside
time.
of their
It's you being
business.
able to
True
hear that
personal
still small
freedom.
voice within you
Let's go.
and then being able to take action from that intimate connection of that guidance. So it's instead of going to your own understanding, which is again, this is the typical place that most of us reside, is we go to our own understanding, what we believe we're capable of, what we believe we could do, what we believe is possible. Instead of going to our own understanding, we go into the depths within us and we ask, God, what am I here for? And if God still feels too triggering, it's life, universe, spirit. What am I here for? what is this next phase of my journey meant to be? Who am I meant to be? Right here in my life, right here in my business, right here in my relationships, who am I meant to be? How am I meant to be showing up? What is here for me? And you'll immediately have a response within you, like immediately. And if you don't immediately, it's because you have uncertainty, fear, doubt, clouding your ability to hear/see. Does that make sense? And in which case you need to step out of that fear, shame, self-doubt and step into more faith and then ask again. Again, these things are already there. They aren't mysterious. They aren't hidden. They aren't like, you got to like find them. You don't need a bunch of time to like sit with it and be with it and think about it. You can do all of those things. And so many of us do, self included over the years. And none of that is really true. Ways in which that we slow the process down because we just don't really know how to access it. We don't know how to tap into the divine guidance within us. We don't know how to trust that that inspiration that we had was actually God moving through you and saying, hey, do this thing. I have that happen all of the time. I think just yesterday I was aware that a family member's name came to my mind and I delayed. And then when I thought back on it, I was like, that was the inner guidance. That was the still small voice within me. That was God within me saying, hey, reach out to that person. Because my immediate answer wants to go, but why? And God is like, you don't need to know why, right? Or sweet child, why do you think you need to know why? Just follow the guidance. And that is the hardest part for me still, is to not go into the, but why God, right? But why life? But why spirit? Why is it? Just going to put my desk down so I can sit down. Why is it that I should do that? Or why is it that I'm reaching out to that person? Or what's going to happen when I do? We want to know, right? I just had a client who was like, I just really want to know the path. He was messaging me and he's like, I just really want to know the path for me. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, who doesn't want to know the path? Who doesn't want to like have the path clear and all outlined? Yeah, we all do. And that isn't the SOP of life. Nowhere can we see that we have access to the whole path. We just don't. Like, nobody does. So it's a shift in you to learn how to trust, deeply, deeply trust being connected to this deeper inner part of you where there's no shame, where there's no judgment, where there's no fear. Getting in touch with that part of you and allowing that part to always be leading your movements forward. That is what I believe it means to be in a state of surrender. We're deeply connected, deeply in tune with that divine God part of us, where there's no shame, there's no fear, there's no self-doubt, and we are in tune with it. We are aware of its guidance and we seek it and we give space to it every single day and any time in between the day that we aren't sure what we're meant to be doing. We tap back into that place. And from there, we then take action and do the things as we're being shown them. Whether or not we have a full understanding of the whole path, of why we're doing it, or what's going to happen after we do it. It's so cool, you guys, to really truly live from that place. It is fucking awesome. Okay. And really what I see, the way that I see that you're able to do that consistently over time is by doing the inner work. And when I say that, it means going in within you and removing those very human parts of you that have become the typical pathways and channels of your mind to execute your life. So the typical patterns for so many people are to live in anxiety and fear and self-doubt. And we pop out of those conditions every now and again, and then we go right back to them because those have become our default, if you will, the neurological place within our brains, our minds, has become the default pathways that we typically do most of our life. And so there's a shift when we go in and we look at that and we begin to remove those typical patterns that are motivated from fear, shame, anxiety, and self-judgment. And we create new pathways. the new pathways, which are faith and trust and gratitude and feeling deeply satisfied with our life as it is right now. And we get really comfortable with the process of being in surrender. We get really comfortable with being super tuned in with that part of ourselves and following the guidance as it's shown to us. And so the inner work helps you remove those parts that are not allowing you to be in the state of surrender. All right, you guys. So just to wrap it up, we have gotten so much more clear on what it is to be in control in the big spiritual SOPs of life, right? What it is to be in control, what it is to be in surrender, and the difference between the two. And then the internal shift that must happen inside of you in order to actually learn how to live in the surrendered state and then simply go live that way and know how to live that way. So I'll just conclude by asking you a few questions that came up to me as I was preparing for this podcast. Do you want to live in the surrendered state? Do you want life to feel more easeful, more enjoyable, including the times that kind of suck for like most people, right? Like losing jobs and people passing on. Like those things generally suck. And there is a way to be able to feel greater levels of ease, even in those moments. That's what this offers you. Do you want creating clients and moving your business forward and creating more profit and income in your business to feel even easier? Dare I say, you actually really enjoying that part of your business? Do you want to feel more enjoy and excitement from your business altogether? Do you want to feel that way in your personal life? Do you want to truly believe that something greater truly has your back? No matter what is going on in life, that you can always, always, always go to this divine place inside of you to access this greater power and access it consistently over time. Do you want that? Because it's available for you. All right, you guys, before I close out, I want to let you know I've just launched a new program in my business. I'm just affectionately referring to it as the Faith Pod. So there are 5 slots available at any given time. It's a rolling enrollment. So there's no like launchy thing that happens. It's come on in, and then 6 months, and you can either continue and stay or opt out. And so it's 5 humans who are really deeply desiring to go deeper into their understanding of what it is to live in faith and deeper into their allowing to create more goodness in their business, more income, more excitement, more positive energy, and also in all the areas of their life truly, truly, truly feel deeply satisfied and successful in every area of your life through doing the inner work to create those really beautiful results. So if this interests you, find out more information here in the show notes. And between now and when I see you next, I so look forward to seeing you, my friends. Go do that thing you most want to be doing. Cheers.
Ready to hire your own personal one-to-one mentor to help you take your life and your business to the next level? Go to my website where you can sign up for a no charge, no pressure consultation where we can get to know each other better. I get to hear your vision. I'll help you understand exactly what's getting in your way. And if it feels like a good fit and I believe I can help you, we'll talk about what it looks like to work together.